Welcome to Bite Size Reviews, where we discuss short films of zombie movies you may or may not have seen and talk about what they did right, wrong, and everything in between the teeth. Link to the movie in question is in the description and pinned comment below. Today, we are raising up Hope, a 2016 independent short film directed by Adam A. Lacerdo and written by Lacerdo and Chris Stivel, starring, sorry if I butcher their names, but Herman L. Opedal as Carl and Tonje Bratas as Hope, with the tagline, "No zombie is perfect." This zombie short film offers a perspective we don't get too fairly often in cinematic experiences, and that, my friends, is the perspective of the zombies, or in this case, a zombie itself. But unlike what you probably immediately thought of, Hope is not like Warm Bodies in a number of ways throughout its less than 10-minute runtime. Following the film's main character Carl, dressed as an employee of an ice cream parlor, I guess, as he mindlessly strolls down a country road only to be harassed by the living. The way he shrugs it off shows how used to it and casual this abuse is in his everyday life. This is briefly laid out by a stoic Western narrator explaining how the zombies of this world work and how a sudden plague took over, saying that the world was struck back and slowed down in the initial spread of this disease. But over time, people passed it off as nothing and would eventually continue life normally, despite the literal dead reanimating before them.
As those affected by the disease did not attack the living, but instead would just wander off, paying no mind to the brains and entrails of the healthy humans nearby.
So, we are given a zombie outbreak where the dead are not flesh-craving cannibalistic corpses and not an immediate threat, and instead just look grotesque, are rotting apart, and in no way seek to harm the living. However, because of how different the dead look and act, the living will spend every opportunity to discriminate them and harass them to their heart's content. From having the living throw stuff at them as they walk down the street, stringing up the dead to trees to mercilessly beat them, or even down to shooting them with live ammunition in the middle of the street without fearing of any lawful repercussion. A society where the dead have the stigma of attacking the living because of popular media and have just wanted to blissfully wander the world, while the living openly shun, abuse, and ridicule them at every chance, offers a lot in the way of comedy, social commentary, and most of all, give us hope. And the short movie's namesake is seen fairly quickly after the title card, as Carl walks his continued loadsome road through a lush forest, only to find two young children blocking his path. Maybe as a fragment of his former life and recollection, do we see his eyes furrow in a look of hope at these kids who might offer him some solace and an unbiased perspective and understanding at what everyone around him labels as a monster, because sometimes kids can see monsters for more than what they are on the outside. However, the only interaction they give in return is picking up sticks and mud without offering a single word, as if, like prehistoric man, intimidating Carl as he attempts to walk away from any potential conflict. However, the kids metaphorically cast the first stone, or clob of mud, with their expressions having no sign of emotion, being nothing but calloused husks, either masking themselves or repeatedly blowing bubblegum, even showing less expression than the zombie Carl himself. As Carl attempts to flee the confrontation with the stick from earlier driven into his heart, possibly a reference to one of cinema's earliest monsters, Dracula, who can only be killed by driving a wooden stake through his heart, Carl witnesses some good old boys whomping on the defenseless zombie as he keeps on running away. We get glimpses of how the world perceives the undead as a subclass of humans, where even a homeless man attacks and mugs Carl, ripping the shoes off of his decaying feet, only to crazily wear them on his hands as he goes off, laughing all the way. And nobody pays any mind to it. It's during this exchange, though, that we do see an Easter egg that reveals that the idea of a zombie is a part of popular culture in this universe, considering even an elderly woman is seen reading through Max Brooks's Zombie Survival Guide, which I do need to get around to reading at some point. Maybe these zombies are facing discrimination from the living because of how media has always portrayed them as flesh-hungry, mindless monsters? Typically, the idea of zombies integrating into our society to some degree comes after some kind of violent outbreak or bloodied history, where they will rip apart healthy people and devour their flesh. In Shaun of the Dead, after the zombie outbreak was simmered down, the undead were used as useful drones for remedial work and entertainment, or in warm bodies where the living and dead kind of have a warful Romeo and Juliet thing going on, but here we just get a docile dope with hope who just wants to elope as people around him say nope. Carl has a brief respite as he briefly gazes at a photo of a girl in his pocket. One that he had earlier when a group of rednecks knocked it out of his hands by throwing stuff at him. Maybe a glimpse of hope that he might find a long-lost love, although that might be a bit of a pickle in this world. But this hope is swiftly dashed when some old friends show up. Carl starts getting stalked by the kids from earlier on bikes because nothing is creepier or more horrific than children.
There is only one thing worse than a rapist. Boom. A child.
As they, of course, symbolically corner him in a graveyard close by a church as it tolls. They push him with his back against the metaphorical wall, with him taking a dirt nap in a conveniently placed open grave, wooden cross and all. With Carl stuck in an open grave, scared and alone, the kids bury him alive, or I guess you could say technically alive. Basically, in this moment, the youth of this generation are telling him to go back where he came from without uttering one word. And where did the dead come from? Their graves. Which, side note, the movie does a great job of telling a story without its characters speaking one single word, with only the narrator giving expository dialogue to catch the viewer up. But the living and dead only give out grunts, laughs, and screams, reflecting how well the directing and writing were for the short film's visual storytelling. We get a great callback to the original idea of zombies rising from their graves, with this arm waking up from a dirt nap, but struggling to get out on his own. When all hope seems lost of him getting out, a helping hand appears to pull him out of his early, or I would say late, grave, it being the girl he had longed and hoped for all along. Hope being pretty damn attractive for a rotting corpse.
What the hell did you just say?
I promise I'm not promoting necrophilia or saying I'm into that sort of thing. Just saying she kinda cute though. We actually see the humanity in Carl as he spins in circles with Hope, smiling and falling to the ground like a dumbass in love. They spend the day together dancing, strolling through the park hand in hand, and gazing into each other's milky, wadded out, cataract-stricken eyes, despite how much both of them are still rotting and exposed. Romance is still very much alive in these non-still beating hearts. That is, until hope is lost for Carl. The one time Carl felt alive, felt like there was no wrongs in the world, he visibly felt like a human being, and more importantly, that he wasn't alone as he walked this dreary world. Hope is blown away in an instant by the emotionless and dead-faced children that had done nothing but harassed him and buried him alive. Which, why are these kids just casually strolling around with a revolver in the first place?
This is America.
It's at this moment, after losing all hope at trying to live a normal life, or however normal a zombie's life could be, after being pushed so far and reflecting on how the world and its people, the living people, had treated him, that Carl's rage hits a boiling point, and his eyes turn blood red, contrasting with the blood of hope still splattered across his face. His expression transformed from a frightful and innocent being to the very monster that the living had pegged him as and forced him to become. He stares down the troublesome kids as an old western high noon track plays, with each of their faces highlighted one last time. Carl, full of rage, possibly a reference to the Rage Infected of the 28 Days series, while one kid keeps popping her bubblegum like an annoying little shit, not giving two shits of what she did, being cocky that the big iron on her hip would keep them safe. The overly dramatic zoom-in shots on all their faces here are equally badass and funny, and the scene of the tree dividing the three in the center of the screen is beautifully shot. Both of the kids take pot shots at Carl, but run out of ammo as he stands in front of them defenseless as he descends on them with the full fury of all of his anger. It's from there that a living man and a dead man bear witness to Carl ripping them limb from limb, and while the living man continues to run without looking ahead, gawking at this bloody scene, the zombie with an arrow through his neck, who has also dealt with the abuse of living humans, changes his view of the world to a blood-red sight and begins to cannibalize the running dude. Carl's influence has changed somebody else's perspective. A peaceful melody plays as the body parts of the abusive kids fly through the air. In any other situation, this would be mortifying to the average person, but seeing it through the blood-tinted eyes of the zombie public, this is a moment of clarity and retribution that was oh so satisfying. All the other zombies in the park gather around as Carl does what zombies have always been portrayed to do, and that is to rip a living person apart and eat what's ever inside. And when Carl has finished his carnage-fueled meal, angrily stares at his brothers and sisters with blood all around his mouth and clothing, depicting how the violence has changed him. The rest of the zombies, looking at him and seeing what he's done, descend on the remains of the kids and begin to feast, showing how they all had enough of their treatment for being thought of as monsters, that they indeed become those monsters in the end to fight back. Carl walks out from the forest from earlier, but this time is not alone as the tricklings of a classic zombie horde start to clamber out beside him.
Even though things didn't work out for Carl, some would say that it's better to have loved and lost than to not have loved at all.
Showing even though he had indeed lost hope, he could persevere and not be driven back by those that showed nothing but hate and malice towards him and his fellow zombies. Hope is an instant classic for me, and something I would watch time and time again for having yet another fresh and unique take in the zombie short film scene, with comical elements that give a greater appreciation for its underlying tones, that I probably read a little too much into, as I always do with these analytical videos. Someone in the comment section call me out for this. That's probably what I did. Taking the idea of an undead man's perspective in a world where zombies have no violent or flesh-craving tendencies at the time, but the stigma of the zombie still exists to where the peaceful dead are plagued by the fear-driven hate of the living. It makes you connect with what is usually the mindless and lifeless beasts that are gunned down left and right, giving them personality and life, while painting the living people as either dead in expression or heartless in their actions. Its ending felt deserved and earned, and I never thought I'd be so happy to see someone's innards flying through the air. That was a beautiful moment. It's a joy to watch and hits every note very well for its short run time. And it makes me wish that this was an alternate universe where a full feature-length movie could have been made with this idea in mind. But to be honest, its lack of dialogue outside of the narrator and really just painting a picture without having any words spoken gives it a special charm that can only be done with a film of this length. Hope garnered over a dozen awards in 2017, including Best Comedy Short at the Bloodstained Indie Festival in Japan, Best Short Film and Horror Comedy at Cinema Fantastique in Canada, Best Comedy at Phoenix Comic-Con, and even Best Screenplay at the Sin City Horror Fest, reaching over 4 million views since its debut on YouTube in May of 2018. And scrolling through their multiple social media pages from a few years ago, like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I can tell everyone involved thoroughly enjoyed making this movie. Adam Lacerdo set out to make a memorable zombie experience, and much like Carl's former profession, he delivered. Did you enjoy my hopeful review? Did you think I went a bit over the top with my analysis of this film today? Is there a zombie short film out there that needs a bite-sized review taken out of it? Comment below to file your grievances and praises, and why not drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to support the channel further, which a view and like is all I really ask for, you can be one of these fine folks here that donated, like a longtime donator, a Patreon patron, a YouTube channel member, or simply donating during my live streams of any amount. And special thanks to Wisefish for helping me editing all of these videos. I appreciate all his help, so make sure to subscribe to him. Also, make sure to check out today's film in question, Hope, and see it for yourself to support the filmmakers who brought this to life. I highly recommend it. Link is here on the screen, in the pinned comment and description. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay nice, stay wow, and don't be dead because...
Ain't death a bitch?